Genuine Farm. Chapter 5. The Builders. The days that followed were unlike anything Genuine Undead had experienced before. The story of war had left its mark on the community, and Mason, more than anyone else, seemed determined to make sure moments like that would never be forgotten. Every Twitter space gradually drifted toward the same conversation. If Genuine Undead was going to become something greater than an NFT collection, someone would have to preserve its history while it was still being written. It wasn't long before he proposed a new council. The GU Lore Council quickly became one of the most unusual forces within the Discord. There were no deadlines, no roadmaps, and no guarantees that anything discussed there would ever amount to more than ideas. Yet every week people gathered to imagine what Genuine Undead might one day become. Some envisioned comic books. Others dreamed of animated series, films, or video games. They debated characters, revisited old events, and searched for meaning in stories that, only weeks earlier, had simply been everyday moments inside the community. Whether any of it would ever leave those voice channels hardly mattered. What mattered was that, for the first time, Genuine Undead was beginning to imagine a future beyond NFTs. While Mason dreamt about tomorrow, hundreds of others quietly built today. Master Chief had somehow become the unofficial GIF maker of the Discord. One by one, holders asked him to animate their Genuine Undeads until static profile pictures were suddenly running, dancing, and celebrating throughout every channel. It wasn't long before almost everyone wanted their own GIF. Conversations no longer consisted only of text. Genuine Undead had started moving. At the same time, Sachko and Lozak's Pixel were bringing the collection to life in a different way. Their pixel art animations captured the spirit of Genuine Undead so perfectly that they almost looked as though they had always belonged there. In the People's Council, Sandman had grown into one of its driving forces, while Chad and KT-chan balanced moderation with helping newcomers navigate wallets, marketplaces, and the countless scams that lurked around Web3. Every week, new holders arrived, and every week someone took the time to answer the same beginner questions with the same patience they wish someone had shown them when they first started. One hockey nut had become almost impossible to keep track of, not because he had disappeared, but because he somehow seemed to be everywhere at once. If Dr. Boom and Mason were taking part in a Twitter space, Hockey was usually somewhere behind the scenes making sure everything ran smoothly. If announcements needed organizing or community initiatives needed another pair of hands, he always seemed to arrive before anyone had asked. His responsibilities had grown naturally until most people simply accepted that if something important was happening, Hockey was probably already working on it. Elsewhere, the French community continued growing around their obsession with the paperboy trait, while the Italians gathered around Satoshi Lumbo's addictive personality. Meanwhile, Saigo quietly laid the foundations for what would eventually become one of the first GU spin-off projects. Nicotasia and Olga seemed to know everybody, welcoming familiar faces and complete strangers with the same warmth that had made the Discord feel different from every other project. There were traders who lived from chart to chart. There were investors who cared only about the rarest pieces. There were artists. There were educators. And then there were the raiders. Every day, without anyone asking, hundreds of holders filled Twitter with replies, likes, GIFs, and retweets, convinced that one more raid might introduce Genuine Undead to the next lifelong member. It had become a ritual as familiar as the morning coffee. Somebody would post a link. The Discord would empty for a few minutes. Twitter would suddenly fill with GUs. Then everybody would return as though nothing had happened. Long after the Twitter spaces had ended, it wasn't unusual to find Dr. Boom, Eki and Mason still talking in voice chat well into the early hours of the morning. Along with a handful of other GUs, they laughed about impossible trait trades, argued over whether Loose would always remain the kings of the collection, and imagined where Genuine Undead might one day end up. Somewhere between those conversations, genuine friendships quietly formed. Those late nights also taught Dr. Boom and Mason something about Eki. If something didn't sit right with him, there was very little chance he would keep it to himself. If Eki thought something was nonsense, chances were everybody in the Discord would hear about it before the day was over. More often than not, those conversations found their way into the weekly meetings of the Undead Council, where every idea, no matter how small, eventually had its turn to be discussed. The Tuesday meetings of the Undead Council had become almost as much a part of Genuine Undead as the Twitter spaces themselves. Every week, the same familiar voices gathered to discuss whatever the community had managed to invent over the previous 7 days. Sometimes it was a new partnership. Sometimes it was another event, another Discord feature, or another idea that had somehow grown from a passing joke into a genuine proposal. Most meetings ended the same way they had begun, with more laughter than decisions, and everyone quietly returning to whatever part of Genuine Undead they had been building before. This meeting felt no different. Degen joined, as he always did, carrying another list of improvements he had been working on with his friend Bones. Every new idea somehow became another page for them to design, another feature to build, or another late night spent making sure the project looked every bit as alive as the community behind it. Like so many others inside Genuine Undead, they had never stopped to count the hours. Dr. Boom greeted everyone in his usual calm manner. Mason arrived a few minutes later, apologizing for almost missing the meeting after another never-ending Twitter space. Egbert, as treasurer, gave the community's regular financial update. The floor price had drifted lower over the previous days, but royalties had continued flowing into the community wallet. Despite the market beginning to cool, the treasury itself had quietly grown into something substantial. It was reassuring news. The meeting continued as it always did. One council after another gave its weekly update, new ideas were discussed, and problems were solved. For a while, it felt like any other Tuesday. Then Degen cleared his throat. I need to bring something up. We love building a website, but I don't think we can keep doing it for free anymore. For a brief moment, nobody answered. Dr. Boom was the first to break the silence. Brother, nobody here could ever question the work you and Bones have put into this project. There was no disagreement. Dr. Boom leaned back in his chair. Brother, I've actually been giving this some thought as well. He glanced around the call before continuing. Mason and I have been spending just as much of our lives on GU lately. 100%. Mason joined in. Every minute I've got goes into GU. If I'm not on a Twitter space, I'm in the lore council building. Dr. Boom continued. I think it's probably time we had a conversation. He never finished the sentence. For the first time in weeks, someone interrupted him. After all, progress has a way of making people forget where they started. But not everyone in the Undead Council was ready to forget.